Welcome to the AT Parenting Survival Podcast, where you get help and guidance through the chaos of parenting a child with anxiety or OCD. This show is for educational purposes and is not intended to replace the guidance of a qualified professional. Here's your host, child therapist, Natasha Daniels.
Well, hello there, and welcome to another episode of the AT Parenting Survival Podcast. Today, I want to talk to you about using Mel Robbins' let them theory with kids with anxiety and OCD. And even if you didn't read the book, I'll tell you what it's about. And this concept, it's not a new or novel concept, but I do think it is worth discussing how we approach our kids' anxiety and OCD and what things we control and what things we don't control. And I'm going to go into a little bit about what her book is about, but then how we apply that to our kids. And regardless of whether you read the book or not, it's a fantastic book. You should read it. You'll get something from this episode as far as how do we dance with our kids' anxiety and OCD in ways that reduce overwhelm and actually create more effective results. So we'll dive into that in a second. But I do want to thank NoCD for sponsoring this episode. NoCD offers affordable, effective, convenient therapy, and they're available in the U.S. and outside the U.S. You can schedule your free 15-minute consultation to see if NoCD is a right fit for you and your child. Just go to treatmyocd.com. That's treatmyocd.com. I'll also leave a link in the show notes. And I don't know if you're aware that I have an OCD card deck. And so if you've been wondering or worrying about how to keep your kids, teens, and young adults' skills alive related to OCD, my card deck is a great supplement or a great maintenance tool or a great thing to just add to your toolbox when you're trying to help your kids build skills long-term to crush OCD. They get to pick a card each day and then either think about what is on the card. Sometimes it's just a thought or an inspirational perspective. And a lot of times it's an action, it's an exercise, it's something to do or practice throughout the day. And when our kids practice their skills on a daily basis, research shows that the more they use those skills, the better they do long term. And that's hard to do unless you have kind of a concrete tool that kind of reinforces that schedule and makes it fun. So you can check out my OCD card deck at natashadaniels.com/shop. All right, let's talk about the let them theory. We'll talk about that first. I hadn't really dived into Mel Robinson's work until this book came out and saw it somewhere. I think I actually saw her reading it on Facebook and I thought, I like that. That's an interesting concept. It's not a novel idea, but sometimes you just need someone to kind of tell you something in a fresh way that opens up your eyes. And I definitely recommend getting her book. I got the Audible version. I really enjoyed the Audible version because I'm an auditory learner. So most of the things that I consume are Audible related. But she has an actual book as well. And with the let them theory, it's very simplistic, but it's this idea that let's just talk about it in your regular life, and then we'll talk about how to apply it to our kids. And I might not do her book justice, so there's like a little caveat to begin with, but it's, let people in our lives do what they're going to do because they're going to do what they're going to do. And we don't get to control other people. And so much of our energy, our anger, our frustration, our stress comes from other people. Their actions, what they do, how they impact us on all sorts of levels. Just strangers, how they drive, how they interact with other people, how they treat us in relationships, how our partners act, what they do, how that impacts us, our friends, our family. And the overall, because this isn't an episode about her book, it's about how to tweak it. But the overarching theme is let them. Because you know what? In general, you have no choice anyway. So if your husband's messy, let him. If there's a stranger who's rude to you or judgmental, let them. That's actually a really good one for me with my social anxiety, is if they're going to judge me, let them. It's not like you can control it anyway. I think that's the caveat here is like, yeah, you're saying let them, but ultimately, do you have a say in it anyway? And the answer is no. People are going to be who they are. And Mel Robbins brings up a good point where she's like, people, when we're talking about adults, we're not talking about our kids yet. We're talking about adults. They're acting the way they're acting out of their own lack, their lack of skills, their lack of whatever is going on in their life, where they're at emotionally, where they, what is happening with them. And we really don't get to control that. But the second part of her let them theory, which I think is the most powerful part, is the let me. So it's not let them walk all over me. Let them do all this to me. Let me just be a doormat for the world because I can't control it. So just bulldoze over me. What am I going to do? No, it's actually an empowering perspective because it puts the burden and the ownership back on you. Let me. So there's the let them do this. And there's let me. What am I going to do? How am I going to respond to that? I'll give you an example in my real life, but I'll try to just keep it broad so I don't talk about anything specific. But there's someone who cancels all the time when I make plans with them. They cancel 90% of the time. And I started to get angry about it because it felt disrespectful. It felt like they didn't care about the relationship because they cancel all the time. 90% of the time. So it's very likely we're actually going to do what we say we're going to do. And I was noticing that after the last cancellation yet again, that I was getting angry and I was getting hurt. And I was like, this isn't important to this person. I'm not an important part of their life. They don't care. They're not taking this seriously. And then kind of using the let them theory just to show you this in action in a very basic sort of way, I don't get to control that. And in this particular instance, is it about me? It's not about me. They're probably late to a lot of things. They probably cancel a lot of things. There's something probably going on in their world that I'm not privy to, right? And even if it was about me, because sometimes it is, I mean, not me, but like in general, right? Sometimes it is about us. We still don't really get to control that. And so I turned that situation. I asked myself, what am I going to do about that? Because I have a choice. I can either just accept that this person is going to be inconsistent, accept that I'm not a priority in their life, and accept that our friendship is going to be like watered down and not really significant, and that's okay. And then I'm going to let go of my disappointment. I'm going to let go of my anger because I'm moving into acceptance. But I'm also going to not prioritize this person in my life, not a tit for tat, but more of I value me. And I'm not feeling like their actions are telling me that they don't value me to the level that I had valued them. And so then I realize that there are choices. I can choose to not make plans with them anymore and distance myself, or even overtly say, it looks like you're busy in life. This is a busy season. It looks like maybe this isn't a time for us to connect. I could say that. I could say, I don't really want to make plans anymore, right? These are the let me things. Or I could just agree to let it go, not anger me, and not prioritize them in my life because I want to be surrounded by people who really value me, take me seriously, and want to show up for me as much as I want to show up for them. That feels better. And she goes into her book in all sorts of ways. She talks about coworkers. She talks about your boss. She talks about your partner, your romantic relationships, dating. She talks about your parents and your relatives and your friends and your kids. But she always has, I don't want to use the word caveat for the third time in this episode when I'm only 10 minutes in, but I'm going to because I can't think of another word. That's why I was pausing. I'm like, I think I've used the word caveat twice already. But she has caveats. I'm going to use it. I don't care. Because let me use this word. She has like an appendix, or not an appendix. She has like a supplemental PDF on how to adapt this for kids. When I read it, It wasn't written by Ross Greene, but I was like, isn't this Ross Greene? It was all Ross Greene. It was about collaboration, and even the language sounded almost identical to a Ross Greene book. So I thought that was interesting. So it was nothing new to me. It was just basically like, it was Ross Greene. It was the Ross Greene approach, but it was someone else's approach in there. So that was confusing to me because it sounded very, very much the same. But we'll talk about that as we go on, because I think a lot of you are very familiar with the collaborative approach and Ross Greene and working together with your child. But I'm going to talk to you a little bit more. So I didn't get a lot from that PDF, I guess is what I'm trying to say, because it wasn't anything new. It was actually a Ross Greene approach. And I got something a little bit different from her book than collaboration, which is great. And we'll talk about that. But I got something a little bit different from that. But in the book, she does go through how this impacts different relationships. So I just wanted to give you a really light example of someone who is showing me through their behavior that they're not respecting me. And me getting angry each time but doing nothing about it wasn't serving me well, right? I'm just getting angry and frustrated and hurt every single time. And predictably, it happened every single time. So then what do I want to do about that? Because after a while, it's a me problem because it's consistent, and then I either have to let go or do something about it. So how do we apply this to our kids with anxiety and OCD? You kind of get the gist in a very simplistic way of what her book talks about. But as I was listening to this book, I started to shift my thinking with my kids as we were dealing with struggles around anxiety, OCD, and mood instability, and the things that come with that. Like oversleeping, on electronics all the time, being disrespectful, not doing their schoolwork. These are a lot of things that a lot of us deal with as the ramifications of anxiety, OCD, ADHD, impulsivity, mood instability, all that stuff comes with some really difficult behavior as well. And what I was realizing is I was doing very similar to what the example I gave. I was doing that with my own kids. When my son, in particular, wouldn't wake up every morning, I got angry, one, because I personalized it. So he's in online school. So I'm going to just use this as an example. I would get angry. I would wake up in the morning and I would go to wake him up, and he was dead to the world. It was impossible to wake him up. And then I would try to wake him up again. And then I try to wake him up again, and I try to wake him up again. And then I would get really angry because I was like, you're wasting my time. And I could be doing work right now, and I could be doing other things. And you don't even seem to care because you're sleeping and you're ignoring me. And I'm worried that you're going to fall behind in your grades. And I'm worried that you're going to miss your class. And I'm worried that you're not going to, pass 9th grade. But I was worrying a lot more than the one that was sleeping in the bed. And so as I was listening to this audiobook, I started to apply it. And so I started to use this theory in this scenario. And I was like, all right, well, let him sleep in and let me. What's my job, right? Let me. Well, I will wake him up calmly once and then twice. And then if he misses his class, he'll miss his class, and then he'll feel overwhelmed, and then he'll feel behind, and I'll have to do my part, but he'll have to do his part. And I sat down and I actually talked to him, and I said, I'm noticing that I am really worried about your stuff a lot more than you, to the point where I'm so worried that I'm worrying for both of us, and you're not really having to own this at all. So from now on, here's the deal. I'm going to calmly and quietly wake you up, and then I'll quietly and calmly wake you up twice. And then I'm going to go about my day. Let me continue with my day and let me do what I want. I said, I'm happy to help you. I'm happy to wake you up because I know how hard it is. I know with, his issues that you're tired and you're exhausted and it's hard to get up and you're just learning how to kind of pull yourself out of that sleep. But I'll wake you up twice and then I'm going to be done. And then you can choose whether you're going to show up for your class or you do your schoolwork. That'll be up to you. Now, obviously, you can't do this with every kid. That's my fourth use of caveat. Here's my caveat again. What I'm going to tell you as an example may be different for your child. That's not the point. The point is, how we see what they're doing and then how we see what we're doing. Because regardless, my nagging wasn't helping him. Me getting angry and personalizing it wasn't helping him. But what was helping is saying he's got his role. Let him sleep. Let me wake him up. Let me wake him up twice. And then let him miss his class. Let him feel the overwhelm. Because we're in a space right now where I can do that. Now, you may not be, because every kid's different. I know that would ramp him up and that would motivate him, and he would miss things and he'd have to. So when we switch that and we look at what can we do, that can be really helpful. And I want to talk about what this looks like with anxiety and OCD in particular, because we don't get to control whether our kids work on anxiety or OCD. We only get to control what we do when we show up to the situation. So after the break, we're going to talk about what does this look like when we're dealing with anxiety and OCD. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
It's time we put help directly in our kids' hands. Introducing Crushing OCD course for kids and teens.
It was way more helpful than all the other therapy we've ever done because we didn't really know what to do. So we weren't really doing it before. So the course helped to figure out what the exposures are and how to do them.
We're not in therapy and find it really hard to find an ERP trained therapist here. So we're currently with like the public health service, but again, they don't seem to be trained in ERP. It's filled that gap that we don't have that was desperately needed.
This was really well timed for us to use between therapists and to help us get off to a good start with this new practice.
It was easy to use. I was able to do it from my phone or also on the computer.
There's different ages, so there were younger kids, there were teenagers, and so that was really nice too, to have a variety of ages where it wasn't just geared towards younger kids or older kids. It was a nice variety.
It's helpful for our kids to hear it from this third party as opposed to just us saying it.
I really like the offense and defense method. I love working on poking at OCD while it's sleeping. It makes it a little bit easier to do, and it's kind of fun. I'm planning on using it to work on my fear of holding or touching batteries and stuff like that.
So it was really helpful, and I think a lot of other kids would like it. I thought that I was the only one who had worrying about the weather and stuff. And then there was somebody else on there who worried about the same thing, which was really helpful.
Seems less scary to work on stuff now that I've watched this class, and I'm more interested to work on it.
I like trying to do more exposures still, and before I wasn't, I just didn't want to do them.
I've worked on some of my bigger compulsions and been successful.
I realized that it was helpful to do the exposures. Before it was really, really hard. It's still hard, but it's helpful to know that I need to do them.
Before there would be a lot of battles about it, so it is definitely less loggerheads.
Really, really good course and super helpful.
Definitely would recommend this. It's really easy to follow. It's nice bite-sized videos. I really like the worksheets that go along with it, and I think it's really helpful.
To learn more about this course and register your child or teen, go to atparentingsurvivalschool.com.
Welcome back. All right, so in the first half, we talked about just the let them theory in general. I gave you a very brief overview, and I want to talk about how to apply this to anxiety and OCD. Our kids will do what they're capable of doing with their anxiety and OCD. And so they may not want to talk about it. And so I want to say, what are the let them situations that we're in? Let them not talk about it. Let them not resist compulsions. Let them avoid. Let them act out. Let them try to involve us in growing it. Why? Because you have no control anyway. I think that's the whole thing about this whole theory is it's happening anyway. It's not let them really. It's they're going to do it anyway. So it's the emotional baggage that you bring to the situation. If your child doesn't want to talk about anxiety or OCD, let them. Because when you honor that space and you say, they're clearly not wanting to talk about this. They're holding their ears. They're running out of the room. They're saying, stop talking about it. They're saying, I don't want to talk about it. Let them. Let them not talk about it. and let me pause and wait for another time to bring up the subject again. Because when I push, then I'm shutting them down. I'm destroying our trust and communication. Let them not resist compulsions. When you're the OCD police, which by the way is impossible, you can't be everywhere, anywhere, all at once, and you can't be in their head. And there are mental compulsions that are happening all the time in our kids. And so you literally cannot control, even if you wanted to, whether they resist doing compulsions or not. And you will drive yourself crazy if you think that you have 100% ownership in getting them to resist compulsions. They will do compulsions. And as they're working on building their skills or not, they will learn how to build up their ability to resist those compulsions. Maybe if they're in therapy or if they're working on it, and maybe not. But that's a process, regardless of where you're at. And so it's almost like we have a lot of ants in my backyard and it drives me nuts. And for a long time, when we first got this house, I would go nuts on the ants because I have an ant problem. I have like an infestation problem. I don't like infestations of any sort. It's an anxiety theme for sure. And I remember I got obsessed with like seeing ants, and I would get this vinegar because I heard like white vinegar is a really good deterrent. And I'd be spraying white vinegar all over my backyard on the patio because I just didn't want to see them. They could be in the fake grass. We live in Arizona, so there's nothing real here. But they could live in the fake grass, but I didn't want to see them on the patio. And every day I'd come back and there they were again, and there they were again. And just me trying to, stamp out a couple of ants. I wasn't getting to the anthill. I wasn't getting to the queen. And so it's the same thing with just trying to stamp out compulsions when you see your child doing it. Oh, you're doing it again. Stop. Oh, you're washing again. Stop. Oh, you're doing that again. Stop. That will be a withdrawal in the trust bank account every time you're doing that over and over and over again, being the OCD police. And it's not helpful. It normally makes OCD go undercover. We normally are inadvertently encouraging our kids to do mental compulsions that you don't notice or hide them. And so that's all we're doing. And so let them not resist compulsions. Let them do compulsions. It doesn't mean that you have to highlight every single time. Oh, it looks like you're doing a compulsion. It looks like you're growing OCD. They know. Let them do compulsions and let you not be part of them. Let you not supply them with the abundance of soap and detergent and wipes that fuel the compulsions. Let you not answer the reassurance and the confessing compulsions. Let you not answer the checking and the health and the food compulsions. Let you not wash your hands or do the rules that OCD wants you to do. Let you not speak for your child all the time when they're anxious. And these are big, broad, let yous. There's nuance in each one of those. Depending on where you're at and what your journey looks like, it's not as simple as what I'm saying, but I'm giving you the gist of it, right? They're going to do what they're going to do with anxiety and OCD, and you get to do what you want to do with anxiety and OCD. So looking at it from that perspective, if they are going to act out, like if my son has mood instability and he's angry, let him be angry. I sometimes have a hard time letting my kids just feel, and maybe you do too. I don't want them to be angry. I want them to be happy. I don't want them to be anxious. I want them to be content. I don't want them to be mad or depressed. And so it's really easy for us to become the feeling police and control or try to control. It's try because we really don't. Their emotions. Oh, you're angry. Let me make you happy. Let me help you with these skills. Let me pull you out of it. You're panicking. Let me get over there really quick and calm you down. And often we don't just let them have their emotions. And I am so guilty of this. I am a swooper. I swoop in and I get very upset when they're upset. In particular, when my son is angry, because I think there's a trigger for me. Like, oh gosh, I hear him building up and I think he's going to explode. And that dysregulates me. And so I can't let him be angry and dysregulated because then I'm anxious, waiting for the other shoe to drop. But what I've been learning and practicing recently is let him. Up, he's angry, he's frustrated with his work, let him. Do I need to like swoop in early and say, what's upsetting you? Why are you getting angry? What can I do? How can I help you? Because that's what I would do. And a lot of it was out of my own discomfort and trying to preemptively kind of control things. And lately I've been like, let him, and then let me sometimes put AirPods in. I can visually see him, but do I need to hear the pre-build up to his frustration? Because maybe it won't turn into a full blow up. And I'm sitting there anxious for no reason. So let me put my AirPods in while I can still watch him. He's having a really hard time. Let me take my AirPods out. Let me say, is there anything I can do to support you? That's what I can do. Let me do that. And so looking at this back and forth can be really helpful. If my child is struggling with anxiety and OCD, let me try to educate them. They don't want to watch videos. They don't want to watch courses on it. They don't want to read about it. What can I do? That I did my part. I have to let them not want the help in that moment. Because spoiler alert, you don't have the say in it anyway. We can't force someone to get help that they don't want. And that is so hard, especially when there's suicidal ideation or there's self-harm or they're so acute that they're in their bed. And so you can say, let them. I can't let them, just be, a complete emotional mess. It's not that we're letting them. They already are. And like, how can we support them? And often when we don't let them be where they are at, we want to override it. And we override it with aggressive cheerleading or minimizing. You're fine. It's fine. You can do this. Or with aggression, get up. You need to do this. I'm fed up. It's enough already. And so we don't coach from an intentional place because we're not letting them be where they objectively are at, because it's too hard to accept that they're there. None of us want to accept where our kids are at when they're struggling with anxiety and OCD. Let me connect you to resources. Let me find you a qualified OCD therapist. Let them refuse. That's annoying. That's frustrating. I have no control over that. Let me keep our house safe. Let me make sure that we have boundaries where if you're getting aggressive or violent, let me set a boundary. Let me make sure that everybody feels safe in this house. Let me not engage in growing your anxiety and OCD. Let them try to get reassurance. Let them try to tell me to wash my hands. Let them try to tell me I'm a bad parent. Let me not grow your anxiety and OCD. Let them try to push limits. Let them try to get me to let them stay up all night because they're depressed, or let them try to switch their days and their nights. Let me disconnect the Wi-Fi. I'm sorry, that's so funny. That's what we're dealing with in my house, right? With my son, a lot of times they just want to be connected 24/7 because they're bombarded with these really hard, difficult feelings. Let them, right? And they're overwhelmed and they're struggling. Let them. We can't control that. And they want to distract and they want to connect and they want to be plugged in 24/7. Let them. Let me disconnect the Wi-Fi. It seems like, and this is kind of the wording that I use, is your behavior is showing me that you need me to control the Wi-Fi. It looks like you're having a hard time turning off your devices and going to bed. And I've noticed that when you don't get enough sleep, you get very irritable, that your anxiety and OCD gets far, far worse. And your mood instability is really, really bad when you don't get enough sleep. I also notice that you have a really hard time putting down your devices and shutting down and going to sleep on your own. So let me help you with that. I'm going to turn off the Wi-Fi. I actually found that and by the way, you're going to get no pats on the back for these things, right? You're not. But the let them aspect of parenting a child with anxiety and OCD is not let them just wilt away and be this non-productive person and let me do nothing. It's accepting where they're at and then accepting what can you do. That's not getting in their lane, right? You can't go in their lane and try to drive for them. Some of it is accepting of where they're at. I got to meet them where they're at. Yeah, I found that Cox Communications, if you're in the Southwest and you have Cox Communications, they have an app, and it's been a game changer for me because I tried all sorts of devices like Bark, and there's another one, I think Allura I used all sorts of parent devices that turn things off and monitor them. And my son is just so creative and found different ways to kind of work around the system. And I'm like, how are you doing that? And then I found that my cable has an app, and I can literally tag all of his devices, and I can go in and I can pause a device. I can turn off, I can set a bedtime and a wake up time for his devices. It's been glorious. And I don't think he's found a workaround around that. So let him try to stay up all night and let me just turn off all the Wi-Fi. And so it's not like I'm going to get into a power struggle. Yeah, he doesn't like it and he's not happy and he doesn't think I'm Mother of the Year, but he can't control himself. And what can I do about that? I'm not going to get angry or be like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to take it personally. He's got impulsivity and he's got ADHD, and I'm not making excuses for him, but his behavior is obviously showing me that he's not capable. Let me take control over that. Let me, dole out the toilet paper in small increments. Let me get a locked cabinet for the cleaning supplies or for the toilet paper. Yes, that sounds extreme, but when we're dealing with OCD in particular, sometimes we need that level. In my house, it was let me throw out all the candy, all the sugar, because somebody has no impulse control, And so instead of getting mad every time I saw him with candy, because we had a huge vat of Halloween candy we're in February and that was October, so that's gross, but we just didn't eat it all. But I was seeing wrappers everywhere and hidden everywhere. And it was like, all right, let him sneak food. The irony is that he has RFID, restrictive eating, but he's wanting to eat candy, which is super annoying because you're like, if you're going to put something in your mouth, at least put something that will fuel your body. But let him. It was a let him do that. He's going to do that. And instead of just getting angry or threatening him or trying to punish him, it was like, let me get rid of all the temptation. It's my house. Let me throw it all away and not buy any more stuff. I can control what is in my cabinet. Let me get rid of it. And so you can kind of see how this can work. It's a bit of a shift of what can I do versus what should they be doing. Because I can't force my child to do brave things. I can't force them to not do compulsions. I can't force them to have insight or to want to watch videos and learn about anxiety and OCD. But I can do my part. I can do what I want to do. I can pull back my enabling. I can provide them with solid, clinically sound resources, connect them with fantastic therapists. And I have to say, let them when they choose not to use those things in this moment. And so I really think it's recognizing what you don't have control over already. It's like trying to move an ox. Like they dig in to the dirt and you cannot move them. And so when you start to realize that you're picking up the rope, I talk about this a lot, like they want a push and pull, and you're picking up the rope and you're playing tug of war with them, put down the rope and just say, this is your deal. I love you. Your anxiety and OCD is your deal. I'm here to support you. My favorite question to ask my child is, how can I support you? When I see them having a struggle, instead of swooping in and being like, what does your therapist say? Are you using your tools? Are you breathing? Do you want to go for a walk? Do you need to resist? Do you want to delay? Do you want to set the timer? No, I'm like, how can I support you? And most of the time, they don't have an answer for me. I'm just asking. Sometimes I'll say, what do you need from me right now? What can I do for you right now? And I told you already, my favorite one when it's difficult behavior is your behavior is showing me that I need to. that I need to something. You're doing this and I'm going to do this. And so I think that that can be really helpful in understanding that we have our part in what we want to do and how we want to show up. And unfortunately, they have their part. And there is a grieving to where our kids are at. I would like my son to be 10 steps ahead right now. You know, he had medication change in October and it's been downhill since then. And now we're getting a little bit up the hill, but it's slow going. And I often find myself getting frustrated with his inability to do things that he could do before. And I feel resentful and angry and frustrated and scared and overwhelmed and almost claustrophobic too, because we can't travel, we can't do the things we did because he's not there yet. But I have to let him be where he's at. It's physiological, it's not his fault. Let me give him opportunities every day to leave the house and do hard things. Let him refuse if he doesn't want to. I'm not going to physically drag him out. Let me start again the next day and give him another opportunity. Let me connect him to teen groups. Let him refuse to go if he wants to refuse to go. Let him know that this is his journey and that I'm here to support him. But ultimately, it's his anxiety and OCD. One of the things I've also been doing lately that has been interesting is in the past, and this has a lot to do with online school just because this is the trenches for me. But normally in the past, I'd wake him up. First, I'd wake him up very angrily, as we discussed earlier. And then he'd get up, eventually being angry. And I'd be like, it's time. And, you've wasted all this time. And I threaten him like, you're going to go back to regular school if you can't handle managing your time, right? So horrible to wake up to all that. And then I'd say, okay, well, you got a class at 10, and then you got to be doing algebra today. And then you have a little bit of English you need to be making up. So how about you go eat breakfast and then let's get started. That's how I would talk to him. And now I'm waking up in a nicer way because I'm realizing I'm waking him up twice and then I'm going about my day. And normally the second time or the third time, because sometimes it'll be a third time, I'll say things like, I'm not going to come back up. And you do have another class. You have a class at 10. And if you miss it, you miss it. And then I'll leave. And I'll let him sleep in, let him miss it. Because for him, he does care. I have also, total transparency, added a incentive program. And so he can earn a certain amount of money per day if he gets up before a certain time and is logged on. And that has actually helped a lot because he's very money driven. He has his own bank account and I talked to him about savings. And so he's very driven in that way. And there's no way he can earn money in any other way except for this. Because when I offer an incentive, I don't water it down with other ways for them to get the exact same thing because that doesn't work. And so there's only one way right now that he can earn money, and that's for waking up at the designated time. Every day we talk about what time it is. And if he does that, then I will transfer money into his account. It's not a lot per day. But then I said, you know what, how much this will be for a month? Let's do 30 times this amount. That's a lot of money. I don't think that in my head, I was like, oh, he's never going to make that much. But we are in the first week of this and he's done it both days. So you got to keep your promise. You better be ready to do that. But that even helps me even more because I'm like, well, I'll give you an example actually this morning. And then I wanted to tell you something else really quick before we wrap up. But we have this deal. I said, I'll wake you up twice calmly. I don't say the calmly part. That's just my own mental thing of calmly wake him up. And then if he's not logged on, I said, if you're not logged on and taking your class at this time, then you don't earn, that amount. And so I woke him up once. I came back 10 minutes later. Like we said, I woke him up a second time. And then I said, I'm not going to wake you up anymore. This is the time it is. And I'm going downstairs. And it was like 2 minutes before he had to log on. And I was about to go upstairs and say, you only have 2 minutes. You're not going to make it. And I said, no, Natasha, let him sleep. Let him miss it. That's not the deal. You have to pull back your part. And I was shocked. 10 seconds before his class was supposed to start, he came flying down, logged on, was ready to go. But if he didn't, I need to let go, right? Let him do his thing. Let me not give him the money. That was the deal. But the second thing I've been doing is I've been saying to him instead, I say, what does your day look like? Just a shift in me outlining what his day will look like versus me just saying, what does your day look like? And that makes him think. And he does have ADHD, so he needs this. And spoon feeding it has made him be on autopilot. But when I say, what does your day look like? Now he's 15, just some reference for those of you that don't know me well. And he says, okay, well, and you can tell he's just thinking about it. I'm going to go have breakfast, and then I'm going to go work on algebra, and then I'm going to take my class. And he'll outline his entire day. And then sometimes when I see him, take a break or whatever, but then I see him like distracted for quite a long time, let him be distracted. Let me ask him a question that might bring that to his awareness. And so I might say to him, what are your plans for the rest of the day? And this is all I say to him. And he'll say, well, I'm going to take a break for another 15 minutes. And then I'm going to da-da-da-da. But what I was really doing was saying, why aren't you working? But I was framing it in a different way. This has boosted his self-esteem, his self-confidence. Our relationship has gotten better because I have kind of pivoted to let him do what he wants to do and let me do my part, and then let him react in a way that I didn't want him to react or not do what I want him to do, and then let me do whatever. And a lot of that is letting go of control and recognizing when I don't have full say. I don't have any say in his mental health. I only have the little things that I can do to support him. And this is true of you as well. So check out that book. I think you'll find it fascinating. I really did enjoy it. I want to mention 2 other books that I think are really good. When a Loved One Won't Seek Mental Health Treatment by Alec Pollard. Very, 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 very similar, but specific to mental health. A very identical book to the point where I was like, oh my gosh, this is like Alec Pollard's book in disguise. And so I recommend that book. And then Breaking Free of Child Anxiety and OCD by Ellie Leibovitz is a very child level of what we're talking about. Much more systematic and, like scripts of how you do it. Like, and this is Breaking Free of Child Anxiety and OCD is more about systematically pulling back your enabling of the anxiety and OCD. When a Loved One Won't Seek Mental Health Treatment, it's more similar to the let them theory of let our loved ones not want mental health treatment and let me also take care of myself and let me make sure that I'm out doing okay. So it kind of focuses on that. But both are really helpful books as well on this topic, in particular Alec Pollard's book. And I will leave links to both of those in the show notes and on my website. So I hope that you found my little breakdown of the let them theory related to kids and anxiety and OCD helpful. If you're finding my podcast helpful at all, don't forget to hit a star and write a review. And I'll be reading your review if I find one next time. It's been a little while since I've had a review, so have not been reading any of them. But hopefully I'll be reading yours next time. And don't forget to find the sparkle in everything you do. I'll talk to you again next Tuesday. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the AT Parenting Survival Podcast. To get additional support raising a child with anxiety or OCD, visit Natasha's online school of on-demand classes at atparentingsurvivalschool.com.